Hi, thanks for joining us today for Genealogy for the True Beginner. This program is intended for those who have thought about getting involved in genealogy but never really got started. Maybe you created an online family tree but didn't really know where to go from there. So this program is for you. We're going to touch on a lot of different topics today that will give you a good base and foundation to getting started with your research. Today's topics include identify basic genealogy terminology, identify types of genealogy records, discuss beginner research strategies, identify popular online resources, and some research do's and don'ts. To get started, let's go over some genealogy terminology that should be helpful to you as you start your research. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines genealogy in a number of ways. Number 3 will be the most familiar to you, the study of family ancestral lines. Some folks like to differentiate between genealogy and family history, with genealogy being more concerned about the facts and family history being more concerned about the details of the lives of your family. In my opinion, however, it all amounts to the same thing, and both aspects of research are important to creating your family tree. So call yourself a genealogist or a family historian, it's up to you. Here are a few more terms that will be helpful to you in your research. Most recent common ancestor. This is the ancestor generationally closest to you in a family tree that both you and a relative are a descendant of. So think about your first cousin. Your most recent common ancestor are your shared grandparents. Knowing who your most recent common ancestors are will help you determine relationships between you and others in your family tree. Collateral lines. These are relatives who aren't in your direct line, such as siblings, aunts, uncles, and cousins. Some folks only research their direct ancestors, but researching collateral lines can be very helpful. So keep in mind that knowing who your fourth great-grandmother's sister's grandkids are might actually help your research. Universal or World Family Tree. A collaborative online family tree that attempts to connect all people into one single family tree with no duplication. This is different than your own private family tree that only you can edit. Examples include wikitree.com and the Family Search Tree. GEDCOM. This is a genealogy data communications file, the universal file format for genealogy databases that allows users of different software programs to share their data with others. This is similar to Microsoft Word documents or JPEG as an image file. Vital records, the most basic records that are created in response to traditional life events, including birth, marriage, and death. Census, an official government listing of people within a geographical area. The United States federal census is taken every 10 years and records everyone who lives in the country at that time. Family History Library or Center, the genealogy arm of the Mormon Church, which assists in genealogy research. Also, FamilySearch.com. This is a great resource for all genealogists, not just those of the Mormon faith. Let's take a look at the types of records that you can use in your genealogy research. They can be created by the government or by private individuals or organizations. Each record provides unique information about your ancestors, so you should collect as many records as you can. Records can provide conflicting information about your ancestors, but those created contemporary to the event in their life that you're referring to are likely to be more accurate. For example, a birth certificate and a death certificate might contain much of the same information. However, if there's a conflict, such as with the exact date of birth, the birth certificate is more likely to be correct than the death certificate created so many years after the actual event. There will be some genealogy records that are easy to find and others that are much harder to access, but don't give up, keep researching. The next record you find might be the one that breaks down that brick wall. Let's take a look at some specific types of records. I'm focusing on records located in the United States, but many of these records are also available for other countries. Vital records. These are the birth, marriage, and death certificates. They're basic records that mark a person's life, generally created and required by the government by the early 1900s. These records are hit and miss on availability, both in terms of when they were required and the laws regarding access. Residency records. This includes census records, directory records, and more. They can help you locate and track a person over time. These records are often consistently recorded, such as census records, which are taken every 10 years, or city directories, which are new every year. For American ancestors in the 19th and 20th century, these are a very basic and easy record to locate and use. The U.S. Census records date to 1790 and are taken every 10 years for the entire country. Each state might have additional records available, and each year offers a different question or level of information. Census records from 1850 and onward are most helpful for white researchers, and from 1870 onward, after slavery ends, for black researchers. Directories are helpful for urban areas in the late 19th and 20th centuries and can provide information about residency and occupation. Sanborn fire insurance maps are a great resource for learning about an address once you know it. They're like the Google Maps of the 19th century. Court records include wills, deeds, estates, guardianship records, and more. These records are especially important going back prior to the 20th century when there were fewer vital records required by the government. These documents often list family members or infer relationships and private insight into vital dates like deaths. These records are a little bit more difficult to read and understand, often using a lot of legal jargon, and it's not guaranteed that your ancestors were involved with the creation of these records, but they are invaluable when they exist and you can locate them. Military records include draft, pension, service, enlistment, and discharge records, or more. Military records can provide a lot of varied information, from vital statistics to residency information, and help you understand the lives that your ancestors led. The information in these records will vary greatly depending on the time period, but can be very valuable in your research. Immigration records include passenger lists, naturalization, residency certificates, and more. These will vary greatly depending on the time period, but make sure to look both in the United States and the origin country. Newspaper records. You can find all sorts of information in newspapers, from obituaries to birth announcements, marriage announcements, to legally required notifications, or even just announcements about who's visiting who in town today. Religious records. Different faiths recorded life and religious events differently. Inductions and separations of an organization, death, marriage, and more. Often these records were recorded in the absence of government records and may be your only source of information. Occupational records. You'll likely find these for ancestors who worked in government or infrastructure jobs, such as the railroad, the post office, or a hospital. Published genealogies and local history. Be careful. Don't blindly trust these just because they've been published. Check for cited sources and be ready to double check the information provided. So now that we have the terminology and understand types of records that can be useful in genealogy, let's discuss a beginner research strategy that will help you get off to a good start. We're going to talk about goal setting, preparation and organization, doing your pre-search research, and advice for your actual research. First, before you start researching, set a goal. Think of a specific question that you want to answer or a topic you want to research. A single question will keep you from getting overwhelmed. It will help you to stay focused while you learn techniques and build skills. For example, when did my Smith ancestors arrive in this country and where did they come from? Or, what were my ancestors' occupations? You might even pick a very simple question that you already know the answer to. For example, asking where my grandfather lived during the 1930 census. I already knew where he lived. However, to answer this question, I needed to search for him in the census. This strategy will help me practice searching census records or even practicing in searching online databases as a whole. I will also likely find out more information from this record than I expected. For example, the 1930 census asks if households own a radio. You might not have ever thought about this, but the 1930 census will tell you. The results in answering your first question will likely inspire more questions and goals for your future research. The second strategy that I have for you is about preparation and organization. Start by creating your record organization system first. It'll be easier to organize in advance and continue as you go, rather than after you have a mess of documents. To start with, I suggest that you prepare to record your findings on paper genealogy forms. These forms give you a place to record your information and act as a research prompt. Here's some examples: family group sheets, ancestral pedigree charts, research extract forms, records checklists, research logs, and more. You don't have to use all of them, but try them out. You'll probably find which ones work best for you. And no, keeping a paper family tree and documents isn't very high tech, but you don't need to worry about picking software or using online systems when you're just getting started. You can spend more time on that later once you've established your skills and techniques. Having paper forms also ensures that your files are accessible without internet access and that they're easy to flip through. Some great forms are available online through Family Tree Magazine, Ancestor.com, and the National Archives. You're probably thinking about online family trees or computer software. I do suggest waiting until you've established your techniques and skill before ordering any expensive software. Also keep in mind that most of these companies offer a free trial, so try before you buy. As you continue your research, your document pile is going to grow. Every time you find a document about an ancestor, be it a census record, draft card, birth certificate, you want to keep a copy. You can keep your copies either in paper or electronic format, it's up to you, but you do need to keep track of your research as you create your family tree. Accessing paper copies of records might be faster for you than locating digital files, and it can make it easier to browse records as you research. On the other hand, keeping electronic copies is more economical, no paper or printer ink used, and with online research might be more natural. Also, consider how you will organize your documents. A simple file system using folders or binders will work well to get you started. The example shown here works with either physical binders or folders or electronic folders. You start with one binder or folder for each surname, and then within that, you have an additional folder or divider for each individual. It's also important to name your electronic files consistently so that they are easy to find and organize. One example is shown here. Following this naming convention would make it very easy to find all of the wills in your collection or census records. There's one final topic that I want to discuss about preparing and organizing for your genealogy research. You should always cite your sources. I'm not going to suggest a particular citation scheme. No one's grading your work. However, I just want to stress the importance of citation in general, to the point that you can retrace your steps and you and others can relocate the records that you found. For published items, you can follow a traditional scheme if you'd like, such as MLA or Chicago. No need to be exact, but consider creator, title, place of publication, publisher, year of publication, page number. Here's an example from a Early Marriage Records of Elbert County book. For online databases that are otherwise unpublished, you might want to include title of the event, location or page number, the database, the page number or image number, and the repository, for example, Ancestry.com. If you can save a particular URL or web address, that's great as well. Many of the larger online genealogy databases provide citations that you can copy. Here's what it looks like on Family Search, and here's what it looks like on Ancestry.com. The third strategy that I recommend before you start researching is to do your pre-search research. This might not be exactly what you're expecting to hear, but your first step in research doesn't involve searching an online database or visiting an archive. The best way to start your genealogy research is to start by recording what you and your family already know. No, it's not a very exciting prospect, but it's very practical. Instead of jumping into the internet and its vast array of resources, begin with information that can easily be obtained from your own records and from your family. First, start with what you personally know. This means record your own personal knowledge of your nuclear family and their vital stats. Write it down and cite yourself. Pull copies of vital records such as birth certificates, death certificates, obituaries, Bible records, etc. from wherever you store your records. You might be surprised that these records contain details or specifics that you didn't know about. For example, deeds that list property, family Bibles that record birth, marriage, and death. Or an obituary might list extended family members that you didn't know about. Again, cite these sources. Second, interview friends and family. Sit down with your parents, cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents, whoever you have. Ask them what they know about your shared ancestors. Be ready with your forms or other organized way to take notes. Record the conversation with your phone or other device. Sound only is just fine. Keep your goal in mind, but be open to other information they can provide. Why exactly should you start close to home? Well, there's no need to invent the wheel. Sure, you know your own birthday and probably your parents and siblings, maybe your grandparents, maybe not. But still, grab that original document for your records. When you look for your own birth certificate, you might find copies of other documents for more distant relatives you forgot you had. Or the information that you know may be incorrect or incomplete. Perhaps you didn't know your grandmother's maiden name, but it's on the copy of your mother's birth certificate that you already have. You just saved yourself time and money that you might have spent recreating the search. Now that you've prepared and are organized, you're ready to begin your online or in-person research. There are a ton of websites out there to use, but I'm going to suggest a few to get you started. Start out with the free websites before you subscribe to any paid sites. You might start off at FamilySearch.org, which is free to use, but does restrict some services to official affiliate libraries. Gwinnett County Public Library is an affiliate library. We also provide access to Ancestry.com Library Edition. For either of these services, simply use one of our computers at the branch or be logged on to our Wi-Fi. Other free resources include Chronicling America, findagrave.com, and Olive Tree Genealogy. For subscription sites, do the free trial first to see if they have records that apply to your research. The biggest sites might not be helpful if they don't cover geographical areas or topics that apply to your family. Also, remember that most free trials will automatically subscribe you when the time is up, so set a reminder to cancel so that you don't get charged. If you live in the same place your ancestor lived, in-person research might be easy and quick. A genealogy trip is always fun. Check out libraries, archives, courthouses, and family history centers. Here are a few basic tips to keep in mind for your research. The standard spelling of names or knowing the exact dates of birth is definitely a modern concept that's evolved since the institution of the Social Security number. Before then, be prepared to be flexible. Also, geographic borders have changed a lot over time, especially the further back you go. Don't discount a record that appears only one county over. Also keep in mind that cultural values and morals have changed over time. Our ancestors weren't saints, just like we aren't. Be prepared to be surprised at what you find. One common myth, at Ellis Island, the intake officers did not change your ancestors' names, but they might have done it themselves to help them better fit into their new community. For online searches, use Boolean operators to help define your search. For example, put quotation marks around a phrase so that your search engine will search those words together instead of individually. Using an asterisk in place of a letter works as a wildcard. This can be very helpful on names that have multiple spellings. Also, place the word not or a hyphen in front of a word to exclude it from the search. For example, if you're searching for the last name Waters, you could also indicate not river. Once you've found a record, make sure that you evaluate each new find to make sure that the record pertains to your ancestor. Consider, is it the correct time and place? Are the relationships correct? Does the information fit with the other information that you already have? Variation in dates or locations are to be expected. However, watch out for conflicting information, which is also likely to occur. Take, for example, the death certificates of two brothers. On Leverett's death certificate, his parents are listed as John Franklin Waters and Mary Elizabeth Harding. But on his brother's death certificate, Millard's parents are listed as Bayless Waters and Mary E. Pilgrim. Similar, but not the same. More research is required. Keep in mind that your research will likely never be complete. You'll answer specific questions, but you'll always have more. And new record sets will become available to help you answer questions and figure out more questions. For example, the release of the 1950 census in April 2022. There's going to be a lot more information and a lot more questions because of that information. It never stops. To finish up, let's recap some genealogy research do's and don'ts. Do's. First, have a goal in mind, but don't limit yourself. Many folks are interested in genealogy because they have a particular question or problem in mind. Specific questions are a great place to start. However, keep your mind open to new research possibilities. You never know what you might find. Second, be prepared to take your time and build a strong family tree. Third, always record your findings and cite your sources. A few don'ts. Don't trust the internet. There are thousands of family trees online. Some are good, some are terrible. Use these as hints and starting points, but do the research yourself. Don't just do research online. The internet provides access to many databases and repositories, but not everything is online. Don't try just a single search and then give up or accept the search as complete. Genealogy research is never complete. Thanks so much for joining us today. I hope this program was helpful. For more tips for your genealogy research, make sure to check out the Vital Records Genealogy Monthly Tip Series on the Gwinnett County Public Library's YouTube channel.